O thou kind Lord, thou hast created all humanity from the same stock. Thou hast decreed that all shall belong to the same household.
Okay, they're off.
In thy holy presence they are all thy servants, and all mankind are sheltered beneath thy tabernacle. All have gathered together at thy table of bounty. All are illumined through the light of thy province. O thou kind Lord, unite all. Let the religions agree and make the nations one, so that they may see each other as one family and the whole earth as one home. May they all live together in perfect harmony. O God, raise aloft the banner of the oneness of humankind. Cement thou, O God, our hearts together. Gladden our hearts through the fragrance of thy love. Brighten our eyes through the light of thy guidance. Delight our ears with the melody of thy word, and shelter us all in the stronghold of thy providence. Thou art the mighty and powerful, thou art the forgiving, and thou art the one who overlooketh the shortcomings of all mankind. O Father of all, I ask that you strengthen those who are gathered here for the challenges and triumphs to come. Weld together the hearts of all people of goodwill, that we may bring into being that beloved community where all are unafraid of truth and all are welcomed at the banquet table of the Lord. May it be written, may it be so.
Amen. Thank you, Bill. Mary?
Hi, thanks, Brenda. We have a really interesting program today. VIC has been involved, VIC and many VIC members have been involved with the residents of the mobile home parks along Route 1 for decades, I think. Some people here remember when the Walmart came in and trailer park there was taken apart and moved, and a United Community especially did a lot of work trying to help people who were displaced by that. And North Hill, of course, was originally a mobile home park. And now with Embark development plan, a lot of the mobile home parks are in the comprehensive plan slated for development. So we've been talking about for a couple of years with the state people and looking at national examples of how mobile home parks can be made more secure, affordable housing communities. And one way is to secure the land under the mobile home park so that it's run by a nonprofit or owned by a tenants cooperative. And we recently had the first effort by Fairfax County and nonprofits to do that in the Route 1 corridor. And we wanted to kind of explain how that happened, how it was done, what kind of lessons were learned from it, and how it could be done perhaps more proactively in the future with other parks. A mobile home park, mobile homeowners, of course, have a very affordable form of housing. You can buy a mobile home around here for 40, 50, 60, 80,000. You can pay a pad rent of $900 to $1,000. That's way, way below anything you could buy or rent in anywhere else. And the state law that we have right now has been very favorable to the mobile home park owners, except it was amended last year a bit to include a little bit of constraints on parks that were sold possibly for development. And I'm going to say what these regulations are because they figure into the whole story that you're going to hear about what happened with the Harmony Place mobile home park. So if an owner wants to sell a park, if they get an offer on a park, they have to post that offer 60 days before the closing date. And they have to post it with the state, with the county, and they have to tell each tenant in the park about it. And during that 60 days, residents can organize a tenants association, and they can try to get a loan or find a nonprofit buyer and make a comparable offer or higher offer and perhaps buy the park themselves. If the park is sold to a developer, and that nonprofit or cooperative offer must represent 25% of the tenants at least. If a mobile home park is sold to a developer, the mobile homeowners, when the developer decides to develop, they get a 180-day eviction notice to move their home and $3,500 in moving expense, which is pretty harsh. The old homes are hard to move, and it costs more than that to move them. So our panelists are going to tell you the story about how they made an offer on Harmony Place. That's the small mobile home park. It's not real small, but it's smaller than Audubon, its neighbor. It's just south of Costco on Route 1. And they're going to tell you the story and lessons learned, and most importantly, how this could be replicated and perhaps done proactively. So first, we're going to have a short statement by Rodney Lusk, who is the supervisor of Lee District, who really initiated this and kind of pushed it, pulled people together. And then I'm going to introduce our panel, which consists of the main actors in putting this together. So Matt, do you have a video?
Yeah, so I can go ahead and share that now. I just wanted to pass along a message from Supervisor Lusk before I play the message from Supervisor Lusk, I guess. He's very sorry that he couldn't be here. He had a standing commitment with Skipped, which is a larger committee that he doesn't have control over, so he couldn't move. He couldn't move that appointment, but this was a very, very important initiative for our office, and I don't think it's all bad. We learned a lot. I would say after the Workforce Development Center that's going to be coming to the Audubon community, this was the #1 thing we've been working on over the past few months. Deborah Clare from our office was really, really involved in this. She also couldn't be here today, but I worked with Deborah on it. What Supervisor Lusk is going to talk about in this message I'm going to share here is just at a high level, his viewpoint on affordable housing and specifically manufactured housing on the corridor and the catalyst for this journey that we went on. And then we'll get some more of the detail later. But just wanted to provide that context, and I'll go ahead.
We should mention too that the wonderful offer that was pulled together was not accepted by the owner. In the end, it was sold to another mobile home park company.
Okay, can everyone see this?
No.
Yeah, let me start by saying thank you to Vic for giving us the opportunity to talk about the mobile home communities here in Lee. And as you are aware, we have 2 mobile home communities. One is Audubon, the second is Harmony Place. And we will be talking specifically today about our attempt to acquire the Harmony Place mobile home park. I think preserving mobile home units is so important for Fairfax County because they are an affordable housing option. Many of our residents see these as opportunities for them to have their own separate home, and they are able to afford them when they are appropriately priced. When I think about mobile home communities, there are critical values I think should be connected to them. So specifically, when I was running for Lee District Supervisor back in 2019, I became aware that a number of the communities, particularly in Audubon and parts of Harmony Place, were not aware of the planning and zoning actions that were connected to the Embark Richmond Highway study. It became clear to me that they were not aware of it because they were not a part of the Lee District Land Use Committee, and they were not given and were not provided with updates and details on the work of that Embark study. So I committed to do a number of things. The first thing I committed to do was to create a new position in the Lee District office, which was also new to Fairfax County Board of Supervisors offices, and that is to create a Director for Equity and Community Outreach. So Deborah Clare in my office serves in that role, and she's been in that role now for 2 years. What I also committed to do was to have that Director of Equity and Community Outreach be the person to go out into the community and meet with the different folks who had not had representation within our land use process and were not aware of what changes were being made to our plan. And what we did, which I think was really, really important, is we made sure that we had representatives on our land use committee that represented those specific communities. So we now have on our land use committee a representative from Audubon, from Creekside, from Harmony Place, and Sequoia, and they are able to hear about the land use cases as they are coming forward. They're able to participate, and they're able to ask questions, and they're able to influence the outcome. And I think that is so important to giving them a voice and making sure that they're a part of the process. When I first visited Harmony Place, I'm going to say I thought there was no harmony there. And I say that only because of the conditions that I saw. So the very first time I went there was over a year and about 5 months ago. I drove in and noticed that the streets had huge ruts and holes in them. I noticed that there were no sidewalks. I noticed that there were issues with the sewer system that is being maintained on the property. And I noticed that there were a number of units that were really kind of close to the creek, and that I felt that this was not an ideal situation for those residents. We did not have the exact outcome that we wanted with this acquisition of the Harmony Place mobile home park by Six Rock, but we know that we're going to have to be dedicated and vigilant in working with the new owners, Six Rock, to get the improvements that we need, and that we're going to have to continue to work with the county, because we know that this issue can come up again in the future. And we need to be able to use this template that we've created with Harmony Place as a mechanism to help us with future mobile home parks that sell. So again, I'm excited about what was established as the template, disappointed that we weren't able to get this opportunity for the residents. We're going to do everything we can to protect their interests and make sure they have a better community. So again, I want to thank Vic for allowing us to participate in this program today, and I stand committed in continuing to support our mobile home communities here in Lee and in the broader county. And if there are any issues that I can help with Vic in the future, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. Thank you very, very much.
I just wanted to say at the end of that a quick thank you too. There's something that Supervisor Lusk just briefly mentioned, that we became aware of a lot of this stuff during kind of a candidates forum in 2019 that I believe Vic was involved with, along with the South County Task Force and a lot of the other groups, advocacy groups on the corridor. And I thought that it was designed in a really interesting way. Instead of a big room and people taking turns asking the panel of candidates questions, we moved to individual groups that had kind of co-aligned interests, and they got to ask us questions based on their particular community. And one of the groups that kind of made their own little huddle was Harmony Place. And it was the first time Supervisor Lusk and I got to speak with them, because it was still during the campaign, and we learned about a lot of this stuff. And that really, it had a big impact on him and me, I can say personally. And that's why we wanted to be so involved in this when he was eventually elected. So thank you to this group for making sure that that event happened. And I think it's had a big impact over the course of time since then.
Thanks, Matt. So what we've done today is we brought together 4 major players in this effort. Thomas Fleetwood, who is the Director of Housing and Community Development. Many of you know Tom. Tom is the one who secured the county financing, and he worked with the nonprofits and others to put this deal together. He's going to kind of lead a discussion of the sequence of how this happened. George Davies. George, you want to wave your hand? And George is the Executive Director of Catholics for Housing, that's CFH now, and they own a 60-unit mobile home park in Manassas. They have run this park as a nonprofit with the interests of the tenants foremost. in their priorities. And so they are doing in Manassas what we wanted to do here in Fairfax. And he was one of the nonprofit group that worked to make the offer to the owner. Also involved was the Habitat for Humanity and the Tenants and Workers United. So we also have Evelin, who is the director of Tenants and Workers United in this area. She and her folks were organizing Harmony Place tenants well before this issue came up. And she can talk about what the tenants were looking for and what they wanted to get out of this arrangement, and in general, what they would like to see happen with their mobile home park. And then Matt Reninger, you know Matt, he's the Supervisor Lust Chief of Staff. He's also representing Deborah, who couldn't be here today, who is the supervisor office element of this story, who worked with the county office of housing and housing and community development. Okay, so Tom, you want to lead us through and getting other people to chime in as needed through the timeline of what happened at Harmony Place.
Absolutely, Mary. And first of all, I just want to thank Ventures and Community for the work that you do and for this forum to be able to talk about really one of the most important things that we are working on in housing. I think, I'd like to start this story, if I could, I think most appropriately with who this is all about, which is the residents at Harmony Place, and just talk a little bit about the families. At last count, there were about 86 homes, 86 families living at Harmony Place. And, each one of them has their own story, and there's a lot of commonality in the hopes and dreams that they have. Some of the things that really struck me about them, in spite of how comparatively isolated that they were, by language, by income, in some cases by immigration status, was the incredible commitment to community that they have, and really the tremendous courage that they have in terms of trying to work together to understand the fate of their community and how they could have a voice in what happens next, how they could exercise the power that they have to be able to preserve their community. In a sense, I feel like we got lucky with Harmony because of a number of factors. I'll explain that by way of just sort of explaining the roles that the various players had. Then I want to tell sort of the story about the deal itself. We were very lucky in a number of ways that we had a supervisor's office that was fully committed to assisting this community and to helping them to the greatest extent possible preserve their community. We were very lucky that there was a group like Tenants and Workers United that had already been working to develop a relationship with the residents. And the work that Evelin and her team have done and are continuing to do is absolutely essential. And we're very proud to have been able to partner with Tenants and Workers United. We also got very lucky that we have here in this area nonprofit organizations that had directly relevant experience and a successful track record addressing a challenge like what Harmony had, and that's in the form of Catholics for Housing, as well as at the beginning of the process, Habitat for Humanity. And I see Noemi is here, and the role that our nonprofit partners played in this was absolutely essential. So I'm going to tell a little bit of the story, if I could, about what happened, and then I'll stop putting you to sleep and be happy to answer any questions you might have, as I know my colleagues will. Supervisor, I first met with Supervisor Lusk with respect to the situation at Harmony Place in late 2020. Walked the property with him. I had never been to Harmony before, and I grew up here, you know, so I'd never been there, and you know, was so struck by, you know, by the high degree of need there, and you know, certainly the palpable sense of fear about what was going to happen with the community. Over the course of the next several months, we, meaning the housing staff, tenants and workers united, and the residents under the auspices of Supervisor Lusk's office began a conversation that was really aimed at understanding needs and building trust. Eventually, we learned very belatedly from the State Department of Housing and Community Development that there had in fact been a certified offer on the property, a contract on the property, which ostensibly started a 60-day clock in which the tenants had the right to organize and to make a counter offer to the owner. Now, under Virginia law as it currently stands, owners of mobile home parks who have a contract to sell their property must consider a counteroffer from the tenants, but are not compelled to accept it. So it's like a right of first refusal with, you know, not much in the way of teeth behind it. That being said, we put a team together, Tenants and Workers United, Fairfax County Department of Housing, Supervisor's Office, worked with Habitat for Humanity, and then of course Catholics for Housing to determine, okay, where do we stand and what can be done. Tenants and Workers United was absolutely key in helping us, number one, identify the fact that the notice that was given to the tenants was not valid. So Fairfax County stepped in and essentially, you know, pushed the owner to do a new and more fulsome notice to the residents, which essentially started that 60-day clock that I talked about over again. We then chose to pursue a two-track strategy, one that recognized that the contract purchaser, in this case 6 Rock Properties, might very well be able to purchase the property, and how do we begin to develop a relationship with them in the event that was successful. And very importantly, the second track was to help the residents put together their own offer. And the offer that we worked very hard on the county side with the assistance of Supervisor Lusk and with the full backing of the Redevelopment and Housing Authority to scrape together literally every bit of money we could find to help support this offer. And I mean, it came from multiple different sources, from both the county and the Housing Authority, to put together an offer of $8.5 million for the property. And I think we pulled all the money together, I want to say, George, in about 10 days, roughly.
Yes, it was very quick, even though we both had our own governance issues, but we were able to move forward pretty quickly.
That's right. That's right. And so we were able to put together an offer that that the Board of Supervisors could support, that we could pay for, at least with temporary financing, and that Georgia's governing structure, the Board of Directors at Catholics for Housing, could support. And we got the offer in. I want to say the tenants got the offer in, I want to say, with 2 or 3 days to spare. And, you know, and the tenants were able to organize and form an organization to actually, you know, make the offer, in large part because Tenants and Workers United had already been on the ground for a long time and were able to act very quickly to help that all be put together. So, you know, so ultimately the owner did not accept the offer. It wasn't quite the outcome we wanted. And as Supervisor Lusk said in his statement, we are going to be very vigilant with this new owner to make sure that they do what they say they're going to do and that the tenants are treated the right way. But I think maybe I'll just stop there and ask if George and Evelyn would like to, you know, add their commentary here, and then perhaps Mary, we'd certainly be ready for a Q&A after that, unless Matt also has something to add.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. Let's go through people's perspectives and some lessons learned, and then we'll, after that, open it up to everyone. Okay, George?
Well, I just wanted to kind of say that, you know, we weren't even aware of what was going on at Harmony Park at the time, Harmony Place, I'm sorry. However, I did get a call from Noemi from Habitat for Humanity, and she was quick to explain some of the issues that were going on there, what they were faced with, the timelines, infrastructure needs. I got a lot of wealth of information in a 10-minute phone call or a 20-minute phone call. And so that kind of really sparked my curiosity and interest to kind of be at the table. Some of the other things as we were progressing, as you know, another support of why we wanted to be at the table was we realized, you know, after various meetings, how well organized the residents were. I mean, that doesn't usually happen in these instances with the mobile home parks. So that always adds sometimes to your timeline. So, you know, we thank Tenant and Workers because they already had that established. I mean, and that helps with that 60-day time frame, because if you didn't have that, it would have taken 30 to 60 days to organize the residents. The other piece of it was we had high support from the county. Whenever information was needed, they were either able to provide it, or Noemi had the right contact for us to get the information we needed, because we were not aware of all the VDOT issues that were going on over there, also in the floodplain, but we were able to get educated pretty quickly. So that also helped. And we wanted to be there for the residents too, so because we had gone through this process before. Now, I will tell you, East End Mobile Home Park in Manassas was a little bit different, just because there were some legal issues also involved. So that was handled a little bit differently. However, what it did is gave the residents the ability to be at the table and have a say. They actually did an assertion hearing, so they were able to put their money in the court system, their rent, and demand the infrastructure improvements that had not been done for years. So that was very helpful in that environment. This one was a little bit different because there was already a lot of information and data already there, and now you're faced with the 60-day timeline. In Manassas, there was no legislation, so it was, you know, piecing things together as we went along, and legal assistance and that type of information is what the tenants needed to have a say. So we were able to progress further with that. But I think our interest here was, you know, we wanted to help the residents. The county was upfront that it was a two-pronged process. That didn't scare us away because we already knew we were not like, you know, the likelihood of us being able to secure the park probably wasn't real great. But if the owner was interested, we wanted to be there and offer that as one of the options for the residents. And we also understood the second approach is working with the existing buyer to potentially take some financing for the infrastructure, which then would secure it and maintain it as affordable housing. So we thought that was a great process, and we supported that. We supported the county with that. So, you know, our feelings were not hurt if the offer wasn't taken. What we were thinking is what is in the best interest of the residents. And I think having that two-pronged approach was important in this.
Okay,
So-
great. Evelyn, tell us from the tenant's point of view.
Yeah, no, for
Okay.
us, I think for Tenants Workers United, we were in the ground probably for the past 5 years. We have been working in South Fairfax. Our vision as an organization is empowering our people, creating a structure that they can advocate for what they need in their own communities. So based on our mission statement of our organization, we were doing some type of work in South Fairfax around driver's license at that time. So we had an opportunity to really approach Harmony Place in a different angle. It was more into the community. It was more getting to know what was going on. So early on 2020, we noticed that they were living in really bad conditions, but the capacity as a nonprofit is that it was not there yet for us. So what we did during the pandemic, at the beginning of the pandemic, was more providing direct support. Anything that they need, anything that it was available for us, we would bring it into the community. But on September 2020, I brought in a full-time organizer who was really focusing on reaching out and trying to find out what it can be done as a community to improve the conditions that the community was living in. So it was not surprising for us that people was scared, not surprising for us that people didn't know about the whole redevelopment that it's coming their way, not surprising that also they didn't have no trust at all about not just only the county, any identity, right? Just for us to build the trust in the community, it takes a lot of time. But with time, we start identifying that they don't want just to fix their community. They want to keep their community. They want to live there. They want to ensure that no matter what happened, they still be part of South Fairfax. So they start with the idea of how we can become owner or our own land. And we start looking as a nonprofit. For us, it's more like leadership development, door to door, and finding that information that the tenants need in a way that they can understand. So we start looking at community land trust. We start looking at how you can create a co-op. We also reach out to George organization, and we were asking those questions, like how it was formed, how it was created. So we did that research. We took residents to George community in Manassas, right? So they can walk through and they can see the difference and talk to people in there. So we did all this process, but then the next step for us, thinking step by step, was reaching out the county, secure the funding. And I think that's when we were right in the process. We did the outreach, we developed our leaders, we educate the leaders about their options and opportunities. We look at the best practice like George organization in Manassas, and then we go to the county and say, Supervisor Last, which since at the beginning, he said, I'm here to support you, right? But then going back and forth, we spent probably like 4 months having community meetings on their raining, cold weather, outside, because there is no space in Harmony Place, but we were having it in the parking lot. Community meetings, trying to get the county to really secure the funding, right? So finally we get the secure the funding, and then we had the 60-day notice, right? So for us, we were going through a process because the idea of the residents was how we can put an offer before someone else come in and put an offer, because we knew the history on Harmony Place. It was for sale before and they were not able to sell it, right? It was for sale and they were not able to sell it. So I think it's interesting to see that we were there as an organization. We get the community ready, we were ready, right? But then the 60-day notice come, and I think that was really disappointing for our community, right? Because they thought they would make it first to the line and got an offer in. And even though we were learning together through the process, we knew that there was something similar happen in Loudoun County, right? Which other sister organization, New Virginia Minorities, working up there, right? They were able to stop the sale because it was a community, I believe someone from London who want to buy the property, right? Which is totally different than Six Flags, who has a history already of buying this type of property, improving them, and making a living out of this, right? Making business out of something like this. So I think it is important to acknowledge that we have to involve those community into the process, right? And we cannot just come at the last minute and say, this is what is best for you, right? It's good for them to invest on what is best for them. And I think even though we didn't finalize the whole process and getting the land, I think for us as an organization, we have done a great job because those families up there are empowered. And now they are the ones who are basically looking on behalf of themselves, right? So they had a new owner. So what happened with the owner is not going to happen again in Harmony Place. These people is prepared. They are educated. They are empowered. And they have felt through the process that the county has listening to them, right? Maybe we didn't get what they wanted, but at the end, I think they still have a chance to make it better, to better their community. And I think that's a lesson for everyone, right? We need to empower those families. We need to ensure that we cannot just come and say, this is what is best for you. Let's engage them in the conversation early and really listen to them and not just only listen, act on their wishes, right? Because listening to anyone can listen to you, but doing what they want and acting on their behalf is totally different. And I think the county did a great job to move faster, but I think there's some learning, learning experience, right? And I hope we take this along, especially because we had 5 more mobile homes, and we don't know what the future of Harmony Place will hold. But I know that the community is empowered at this moment and willing to step up and do whatever it takes to ensure that their living conditions are not going to be the same moving forward.
Okay. Matt, did you have anything to add at this point? I'm going to move to lessons learned in a minute.
No, I mean, I'll just say this has been a good technical overview. I'd just say what Supervisor Lusk would say if he was here. This wasn't checking a box for us. Like, we really wanted to get this done. When we got the outcome that we did, there were tears shed in our office, and I don't mean metaphorically. This was a very difficult thing, and I think there are some positive outcomes we could draw from it. We already talked about, we have a blueprint now. And with what Evelyn's talking about with the community's organization and engagement, just this Friday coming up, Commissioner Langana and I will be meeting with representatives from Harmony Place for the first time that I'm aware of, where they're organizing to meet with a developer about an adjacent project happening to Harmony Place. So engaging in the land use process in a way that, they haven't done before, and that other mobile home communities in the county are struggling with. So there are positive things to take away from this. And I think lessons learned is a great kind of nomenclature that you used for it, Mary. So I just wanted to share that.
Okay, well, let's go quickly through some lessons learned. And there's kind of two situations that might come up. One is this 60-day notice again, which is still the law and probably will be for a little while if somebody makes an offer on a park. And the other possible scenario is to proactively make an offer, start working with a park owner and start talking about, can the county buy your park and run it with a nonprofit? Are you open to that? Or when might you be open to such an offer? So they know that that's a possibility in addition to a developer coming in. So should I just open it up to the panelists, and what lessons did you learn that might be applicable in those two scenarios?
So maybe I'll start, Mary. Just really briefly, I think one of the really two things, number one, the criticality of the engagement and organization in advance of something happening, so that you're in a position to react with strength. And I think that organizing and education and empowerment of the tenants also puts you in a position to be able to act proactively. So that's number one. Number two is the continuing inherent weakness of the position of tenants and those who would help them under Virginia law relative to how these transactions work. I mentioned at the beginning of my comments that the fact that an owner must consider but does not have to accept a valid counteroffer is a major challenge. So those are two big takeaways for us. I will also say that that the blueprint that this process has given us, the lessons learned about how to get from point A to point B in terms of making an offer, whether it's proactive in advance of competing with someone else or if it's in reaction to something else, has been incredibly valuable in terms of the kind of work that tenants and workers did with the residents, the level of engagement that's necessary. And I will just say that the direct personal engagement of the district supervisor on this one was incredibly valuable in terms of moving this forward. So that's very, very important as well.
Okay. George, how about your organization? You had to go through some stuff with the board of directors, and what would made that easier?
Well, actually, it wasn't that difficult because what I did is I engaged our vice president of the board early on. So he actually came with us and attended the meetings and gave some straightforward examples of what we faced at East End. So this way the residents can get a taste of what their options were. I think that was great to bring to the table. I mean, I was not here during that process of the acquisition. I was here as we were doing some of the the remaining infrastructure improvements. So having that insight at the table, I think, was helpful. I would continue to do that when you're faced with a 60-day notice period. On the other side, if you're being proactive, I'm not sure if I need that. I can work within our regular governance structure to accomplish that unless you have that 60-day, because without the board being engaged right on the onset, it would have made it difficult to be able to make it work. Not so much these days with the pandemic and everything, because some of these decisions could be made by email vote if we're providing all the data that was necessary. But I think between the two of us, Charlie being there and myself, we were able to gather as much data as we needed to be able to present to the board as quickly as possible. So we were able to make that get through really, really quickly. And I know we had back and forth with Tom on that a little bit regarding the loan requirements and all that, but like you said, we put that together in pretty much 10 days. So one of the other lessons I think is really that timeline is what's difficult. And then, is there an option to do proactive offers? And there's probably ways to do that, and probably should be considered, so you're not stuck with a 60-day time frame and you're putting an offer together and everybody knows what their process is going to be. We have tenant workers or a similar agency that's working with the residents. You have your potential nonprofit buyer and maybe the locality if they're at the table. One of the things is most of the time localities aren't really at the table. So in this instance, I think that's one of the successes of this process is that the county was behind it. In Manassas, we didn't have the city behind it. So there's a difference in how you process through it.
Okay, Evelyn, how would you think things could be done differently or better from lessons learned during this experience?
I think, again, for us, since our focus is the residents, and this was something that it come out of the community, right? Meeting with Mr. Fleetwood and Supervisor Last. I think at the last, and it was because of the timing probably, the last 2 weeks, I would say we were not clear on what was happening. It was everything like closed doors, right? And residents start questioning if the county was doing the right thing, if the county was moving forward on their behalf, because there were no clear communication. So I think moving forward, I think we have to try to be as much as we can transparency. You know, and I know that there are some confidential things that we may not be able to discuss, but at least face it up to the community, right? Because at the end of the day, the community was anxious what was going to happen, right? Even though a day before the closing day, which was December 21st, our community members met with the new owner, right? And they keep asking, so they didn't accept our offer. They nothing happening there because they didn't know. They never get that communication back. And I know we were pushing hard, and I know we as organizations sometimes we tend to be, we are on the side of the community, so we're going to be on top of the county and another agency, right? I mean, that's our job. Otherwise, we wouldn't be working with the community. We'll be working with the county, right? But I think it's hard to build relationship, keep the trust, if there is no transparency or communication one way or another one. And I know that we were dealing with a timeline, but we are going back to that community, right? We're still working with the community in one way or another one. So I think it's important to really acknowledge, you know, how we can be transparency through this process in a way that it makes sense. Maybe not 100%, but at least going back to the community and say, hey, you know, here's where we are. Here's the next steps. But I think the last 2 weeks, it was really tough for us to really keep the community calm and say things are moving forward, and we were not hearing anything, right? I would say that. And then we learned a lot as an organization through this process. Honestly, we never have dealt with a mobile home community. So for us, it was all new, the whole process. Definitely, you know, if we had an opportunity to work in another mobile home, we will change a little bit on how we do the work in the ground. That's number one thing. But otherwise, talking about the whole deal with this process, I think transparency in the last 10 days, it was really tough because we were not getting that information to bring it back to the community and for the community to look at us and saying, see, they're making fun of us now, you know, and we were like, no, Supervisor Lask was really on your side, you know, they will do their best for you. But it's hard to really continue with the trust in communication when there is no communication. But I think we all learn from this process, right? It was new for all of us. So hopefully next one, if there is an opportunity to work together, things will be better.
Okay. Well, I think one thing this was really kind of a sea change in the county's attitude, I think, about mobile home communities from they must go and we will rehouse the residents somewhere, sometime, maybe someday, to that these are viable communities, that people do have a lot of what they need in these communities. They have transportation, they have family, they have people who help them out with childcare and transportation and other things. They have churches, they have schools, that tearing that up for a new development causes some harm to these families, and that if they can be kept together, it's a benefit to them. So trying to look at our development process as something that benefits everyone, people who live here, and how can the development that we're looking to along Route 1 actually benefit all the people who live here already. So let me open this up to some questions, and if anybody on the panel wants to say anything else that you didn't get to say, you can do that too. And let's see, I guess, you want to put your hand up either? I can't see the full screen, so let's see, Matt, you're the wizard here. How do I know?
I can call on people. Yeah, I was going to offer, Mary. I'm happy to call on people if you raise your hand.
You do that.
Yeah.
I can only see half the people, so I don't. Yeah. Sure. Okay.
Well, maybe while folks think of their first question, I'll just say, adding on to what Evelin said, in the element of productivity. Now I'm coming at this from the Lee District lens. Obviously, it's not likely that the owners of Harmony Place are going to turn around and sell it anytime soon. And Audubon is a very stable community, so we're not likely to be at the vanguard of one of these processes. anytime soon, but I'm very personally thankful to Chairman McKay and the other members of the Board of Supervisors that were responsive to Supervisor Lusk's advocacy on this and helped pull the offer together and allowed it to move forward. That being said, there are other mobile home communities, and we have the highest concentration here in South County. So we've identified this proactivity as a lesson learned. And if we are interested in seeing elected officials be proactive potentially about the acquisition of the land under some of the other mobile home communities, I think groups like this have a role to play in communicating that in a productive way to them. And maybe this meeting is the first step in that, but I would make sure that, you know, if you are looking at your advocacy priorities or where are the areas you want to focus your energy, this proactivity piece, I personally think is really important. So, and I think VIC and SoCo and other groups have a role to play in that. Maria Burrell.
Hi there, thank you. I'm really new to this topic in Fairfax County, and so I'm wondering, what is the staffing at the county level to maintain advocacy with the residents of mobile home parks as we go through all the development that's going on?
So I think I'll take a shot at that. There are multiple county agencies that are engaged in communities of need across the county, including with the mobile home communities, principally neighborhood and community services. And I see Ms. Walters is here, and I might turn to her to speak just a bit about NCS's role. I can say that from the perspective of the Department of Housing and Community Development, you know, our focus is on the housing needs of the people who are in the mobile home parks. We have undertaken a very significant affordable housing preservation charge from the Board of Supervisors, and we do have staff in our development arm who are able to work on issues like this. I will, however, say that you know, much of the county's community engagement, aside from that is done directly by the board members' offices, driven by our great friends and partners at Neighborhood and Community Services. Ms. Walters, if you would.
Can I just ask you a follow-up question though? You know, this is mobile home parks are pretty technically different than regular, you know, housing, right? So the staff that you just referenced have a background in manufactured housing and know things like floodplain compliance and that sort of thing?
So, you know, it's funny that you ask that, because the short answer is that nobody here presently had real experience with a mobile home park. The last time that this agency had been directly involved with a mobile home park, it was with the disposition of the former Woodley Nightingale Park in the late 1970s and early 80s. So there was not a lot of institutional knowledge here about the challenges of mobile home parks. We learned quick, and we worked hard to understand those issues. And when you pair those issues with the knowledge we do have relative to development, we were able to get up to speed fairly quickly, but there was a major learning curve. I do have to say, you know, that from an ownership and management standpoint, the Housing Authority does also own a mobile home park, the Woodley Hills Mobile Home Park, on the other side of Richmond Highway. So we do have experience from a management standpoint, but from a, you know, development kind of standpoint, we, you know, there wasn't much in the way of institutional knowledge, so we had a lot of learning to do.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Ms.
Thanks,
Walters?
Thanks, Tom. I'll just say from Neighborhood and Community Services perspective, one of our roles is really look at our community response and initiatives. So working with partner organizations and nonprofits to ensure that when there is an issue or concern, to be able to inform residents in our marginalized communities. So we are always open to working with residents and organizations to inform, engage residents about what's happening happening in the community. So you can definitely reach out to me for any kind of concerns, partnering with Supervisor's Law's office, and as Tom said, working with housing to ensure there's education and awareness. And that's part of our inclusive community engagement. So I will put my name and my email in the chat, and if there's any other concerns or questions or information that you'd like to talk offline about, we can definitely do so.
Thank you.
And I'll just add on that, Maria, because I think you joined a little late. If in Supervisor Lusk's video, I can send you the link to it. He mentioned after in that kind of interim period between when he was elected and took office, we did talk about the experience we had with some folks here on this call engaging with the mobile home communities. And one of the first decisions he made as supervisor-elect was to create a position in our office that was dedicated exactly to these kinds of things. And that's what Deborah does for our team. She's a very well-known quantity in these communities. She's like wallpaper there. She's there all the time. I try to do the same thing. And Supervisor Lusk has made clear to our planning commissioner, Dan Lagana, that that's his expectation of him as well. In fact, Dan and I will be out tomorrow morning handing out flyers in Harmony Place about a public meeting. So in addition to the other surrounding communities and communities across Lee District, we do recognize the specific sensitivities, vulnerabilities, and complications related to these parks and dedicate resources accordingly from Rodney's office.
So thank you for that. And so I assume then that Rodney's talking to other supervisors who may also have mobile home parks about the need to have such staff?
Yes, I'll just say yes, and maybe we can talk offline if you'd like.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, okay, great. Ann Hargrove. You're on mute, Ann.
I had two questions. First of all, I was wondering, is there a provision to change the embark plan, you know, depending upon the, you know, future status of mobile home parks? And secondly, I was wondering, like in the case of Harmony Place, were you able to negotiate knowing what the other offer was? Were you privy to that information?
So I can't necessarily speak to the embark component of it. So let me focus on the second part of your question there. The current state, law is that what is disclosed publicly is the dollar amount of the offer. So we did know what they offered, and the counter offer that we made was substantially in excess of that offer.
Do you want to tell the other part of it, Tom?
Yeah, could you expand on that, Tom? I think it'd be really useful for people to understand the narrative, because from the outside looking in, it would make a lot of sense. You just take the offer that's more money, right? And that was the county's sort of leverage. So I think that's an important piece of the puzzle. I'm
sorry. Thank you very much. So in real terms, the contract offer that they had from Six Rock was $8 million. And the money we were able to scrape together, we offered $8.5 million. And, as Matt rightly says, well, gee, why wouldn't they just take the $8.5 million? The challenge we believe was that the contract that the owner had with the buyer in all likelihood provided for certain penalties for non-performance under the contract. And those penalties may have been such that it was not worth, literally in real dollars, it wasn't worth the pain that could be inflicted by the contract purchaser under the contract. That was all sort of a black box to us, Anne, because we never actually saw what those provisions were, nor did we have the right to. But unfortunately, we were not able to get there.
I'll add one thing on that, and this is why right after this process, one of the first things Supervisor Lust did was call Delegate Krizek and just give Delegate Krizek a rundown of what we had experienced. And one of the kind of legislative fixes that Supervisor Lust suggested would be legislation from Richmond that one that would reset, or not, instead of resetting that 60-day clock in a case of non-compliance, like happened in this with notification, it actually void the contract purchase and move everyone back to a level playing field. And then that would have possibly negated these penalties, fees, or pain, as Tom said, that would have been incurred by the seller by not going with the original contract purchase. So Delegate Krisak did carry a bill. I don't know if it's going to make it through this session, but that legislation was introduced in Richmond, and it's directly as a result of what we've learned from this process.
And I would just add on to that, if I could, the full Board of Supervisors endorsed the legislative recommendations of the Mobile Home Task Force, the county's Mobile Home Task Force, which addressed issues such as the length of the notification process as well.
Brenda Faison, I think you had your hand up, Brenda. I think you're on mute, Brenda.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, I did have my hand up, but I know we're running close to time. But I did want to ask the question, can this process be translated to other areas other than mobile homes in Fairfax County, for instance, for low-income homes of or families that, you know, we know we have families that really cannot afford what we see sometimes as affordable housing, but they may be really good tenants. Is it possible that this process can be set aside or made available for them as well? And then the other question is, I wanted to know what the VDOT issues were.
Okay, I'll try and tackle some of that if I could. Number one, and just as a disclaimer, I'm nobody's planning expert. So so before I answer that, I'll just say, with respect to Harmony specifically, there was and is a likelihood, as a result of the widening of Richmond Highway, that I believe it's up to 11 of the mobile home pads may be taken by eminent domain. So that's that question. With respect to the replicability of this process in, like, for example, multifamily housing, a couple things. Number one is that the mobile homes are, you know, operated and governed under a completely different statute than, you know, than what I'll just call sort of regular rental housing. So different, you know, different regulatory regimes, different, you know, different situation. And I will also say that we're talking, generally speaking, about an order of magnitude from a money standpoint, being much larger for a multifamily development than for a mobile home park. So all of that is to say, is that tenants being organized to stand up for, you know, for their rights, to work potentially on their own behalf or with other organizations, you know, nonprofit or affordable housing development organizations, for example, to attempt to secure their properties as affordable housing, is something that certainly can be done.
Thank you.
We had two of those recently, Tom, didn't we? We have two apartment buildings recently bought in Mount Vernon by APA in the county.
So we've had a few things happen in Mount Vernon and Lee with respect to affordable housing preservation. An organization called Lincoln Avenue Capital purchased and preserved Cityside, which is in the, you know, on the northern end of the corridor. The Arlington Housing Corporation, AHC, bought two separate properties with, I think it was around 320 total units that they have preserved to serve households earning largely at 60% of the area median income, but including some lower incomes as well. So, you know, so we have had success in that regard. The Housing Authority provided financing to support the AHC acquisitions. So, so there is real progress being made on preservation.
Great, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I wanted to just answer Ann's other question as best I can regarding Embark. The comp plan amendment for Embark does up the amount of development that can be done at the mobile home parks on the Mount Vernon side. But that doesn't mean the development has to be done. It just is an invitation to developers to come and develop more intensely along the bus rapid transit system. But you don't have to totally meet that development of like 620. Some of these are 20 or 30 dwelling units per acre, which is pretty high. That's how I understand it. Is that you're reading, Matt, too, of the planning?
I'm not sure I think you're talking about PennDOT Terrace for the density.
Well, Pendor and Angleside are both upzoned.
I don't know the site-specific density on the Mount Vernon side, just because.
No, but I mean the part about
the comp plan. Yeah, what Mary said about the comp plan is accurate. So for anyone who's not kind of familiar with the terminology, we have plans for specific sites that authorize uses on those sites that are in harmony or compliance with the plan. And it is, like Mary said, it's an invitation to someone who might want to do that specific use within the authorized parameters on the site. And they can come bring an application to the county, which is subject to review by the supervisor in the magisterial district with jurisdiction over that piece of property, then the planning commission, and then eventually the full board of supervisors. So that is what Mary's talking about, is a possibility. Depending on how you look at it, could be considered eminent, but is certainly possible based off the plan.
So it makes the land more valuable and it makes a developer attracted to it, but it doesn't, the county's not going to develop it. It has to be somebody who wants to buy the land and develop it to get it to develop. Okay. Any more questions, Matt? And Brenda, what's our time?
Actually, your time is up.
Okay.
You've done great job. Kathy, I'm gonna let you close us out. Thank you all to each of the panelists. Is there a burning question that someone has to get out? Okay. All right, Kathy.
Yeah.
You're on mute, Kathy. Yeah, I think you need to select a different microphone. I think you have the wrong one selected.
Okay.
There we go. Is that better? Oh, there we go. Okay. So yes, I like that everybody was talking about Embark because our last meeting of the year is going to be Embark 101, and we're going to learn many new things about Embark and get an update. I've already talked to Supervisor Stork's office about that, and Christina's already lining up some county officials to come speak with us. And our next month's meeting is going to be on voting, voting rights, voting, how we can help move that along and make sure that everybody who can vote can actually vote. So Cameron, I might be reaching out to you since that was both you and Pastor Smith's suggestion. And if anybody else has any ideas of what they'd like to hear at that meeting, shoot me or Brenda an email so we can start to find some speakers for that, because I think that'd be a great way for us to get engaged with our community. And I would actually, Evelyn, while you're still here, I would like to, one of my follow-up questions was, as an organization like VIC, I can't walk into Harmony Place and do the kind of work that you do. Do you see any way that organizations like VIC can help support your organization and what you do?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there is always opportunity, right, to partner up with groups. Maybe not. I mean, I am really careful, and I think it's something that we have to learn, is that our families usually, the lack of the language, the lack of time, a lot of responsibility most of the time in their own homes. They don't have all the time that we wanted, right? So I think we have to be really careful on how we approach them and what we ask them to it, right? Families will move only if they understand and they feel connected to what you're working on, right? You cannot just come up, knock on my door and say, you know, come to this meeting, because they feel, there are many mixed feelings in the community, right? They feel like we are a checkbox to a lot of agencies. Sometimes they feel like, what, I should go to the meeting that nothing has to do with me, why I should share my thoughts or what I want if they don't care about it. So I think we just have to be careful, but there's so many ways that we can partner up with other groups and other organizations. I know that sometimes people think that we are just being selfish. I think we understand so much the community, and we don't want to put them through long process like the Embark. That's so big, even though for myself, right? Like putting our people through the Embark process is, we're gonna get lost anyway, right? But find out what it really connects and what it cares about the Embark for them, and then we can work around that, right? And I think that's what it was easy to organize Harmony Place, because they all want to stay in their homes. They all want to make this affordable. And it's not just only about fixing the community, it's making the community stable, because, you know, the community can be fixed, but the rents will be increased. And that means we're pushing out this brown and Black people out of our county, right? So I think education, connecting, and moving people for the right thing, not just only because there is a meeting in the county and they should go, we can pretend that they should be there. So make it meaningful, but I think we're always open to work with partners and what it makes sense, right, to the community.
Exactly. Well, if you think of something, oh, maybe I should have Vic, you know, help with that, please reach out to us, because I think we have a lot of people in here who want to help. We're just kind of waiting on the sidelines for someone to give us, you know, instruction. So I just wanted to throw that out there. That's all I have.
And now we're working with some other apartment complex like Fayette, Middlewood. I mean, there is great opportunities because there are a lot of needs in the community, and we cannot just look at what is happening now. Like rent relief program is great, but when the money ends, what is next, right? So we have to get ready for the future of this working class communities in Fairfax.
Exactly. Yeah. And what you said was so spot on when you said you've got to build a relationship so that when something happens, you already have those connections made. I find that in all aspects of my life, that is such a huge time saver and so important, because you can tell them something, but if they don't trust you, doesn't matter if it's true or not, right? So you've got to spend the time and build. And that's kind of where I see maybe our organization helping, is starting to lay that groundwork. So when something does happen, like when Embark does knock on the door, we can help them understand what's happening and help advocate with them, not for them. You know what I mean? So yeah, thank you very much. That's all I have, Brenda. So thanks everyone for coming. It was a great meeting.
Yes, thank you.
So, and we'll see you next month at the lovely voting meeting.
Yes.
Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.